It's a record-breaking winter that just won't end in the Northeast. Boston has already had more than 6 feet of snow and has plowed more than 200,000 miles of snow. Where do they put it all? We'll take that question up, too.
Well, the city is trying to figure out just where they can put all that snow, and getting rid of it is proving to be very expensive. Heather Sells has the story.
Once again, a winter storm system is targeting Boston. Forecasters predict 12 to 16 inches by the end of today.
The problem is not this storm itself, but the fact that it's coming on the heels of 2 others. Already this winter, Boston has received 74 inches.
This is pretty much unprecedented.
They're melting snow in Boston, trying to get rid of it all, and even considering dumping it in Boston Harbor.
Plows had moved enough snow to fill Gillette Stadium 90 times.
Boston expects to spend double the $18 million it had projected to remove snow this year. All rail service is suspended in Boston today. On Monday, 50 people were stranded on their morning commute after snow filled up the rails. And schools are closed, marking the 8th snow day this year. For many, just clearing the snow from homes and businesses has become a big concern. Some roofs have caved in.
It's like slow motion, watching the whole thing come down. It was really slow. It was scary. But we all made it out.
Others are simply struggling to find places to put it.
There's nowhere to go anymore.
Most people understand, what can you do? You really can't control the weather.
Forecasters say more snow is possible on Thursday, and the relentless snow is not just affecting Boston. It's causing ripple effects across the country. Airlines canceled 2,000 flights on Monday. After 3 storms in a little over 2 weeks, more than 20,000 flights have been canceled, leaving not just a region but a country that's already weary of winter weather. Heather Sells, CBN News.
A climate expert, has come out and said that they have actually manipulated the figures to try to prove global warming. And guess what? The president goes he goes in an interview with the Vox, whatever that is, and said, our real challenge is not ISIS, it's not terrorists, it is global warming. Go to Boston, Mr. President. In other news, is President Obama getting ready for a stronger military action against terrorists from ISIS? I doubt it, but nevertheless, with Peshmerga closing in on Mosul, good things can be happening. Wendy Griffith has that story.
Thanks, Pat. The president is expected to ask Congress for new war powers for the use of military force against ISIS in Iraq and Syria. That will lead to the first war vote in Congress in 13 years. Some in Congress want the authorization for a major use of military force against ISIS and against any other groups that work with it, but others worry that more military force could lead the U.S. to getting involved in another long war. Well, as Pat mentioned, President Obama says the news media overstates the risk of terrorism. In an interview with the website Vox, the president said he doesn't blame the media for that because it goes for sexy stories like crimes and plane crashes, and terrorism falls into that category. He also says stories like climate change are not sexy because it's happening on such a broad scale that it's hard for the media to report on a day-to-day basis. Climate change, not sexy enough for the president, Pat.
When all that snow in Boston is so sexy, and shutting down all those airlines is so sexy, and it is so newsworthy, and it has been covered by everybody, and the idea that people are not covering it is not true. But in terms of the polar bears and the polar ice, that's a different matter. There's some coverage of it, but at the same time, if the powers that be are manipulating the figures to try to prove something is not the case, we would be the victims of a tremendous scam, and we don't want that. And maybe some media will start covering that as well. Wendy.
Pat, the threat of terrorism is very real in Jordan. That country is keeping up its airstrikes against ISIS after the Islamic terrorists released a videotape last week showing that horrible burning of a Jordanian pilot alive. As Chris Mitchell reports from the Jordanian capital of Amman, the pilot has become a national hero and his death a rallying cry.
You don't have to go far in the capital of Jordan without seeing a poster of the man burned alive by ISIS. His horrific death changed the course of this nation. Before the murder of Moad al-Qasasbeh, many Jordanians were unsure if they should be involved in the U.S.-led coalition to defeat ISIS. But after the horrific killing, public opinion shifted dramatically.
In Jordan, everything has changed, and all people are more unity, and more insist and to eliminate this kind of cancer.
All of us, we are feeling very sad and very bad. We are all one community, and Moad was one of us.
Jordanian analyst Urab al-Rantawi calls the death a turning point.
Before that, the government used to have some problems to convince the Jordanian people that the war against ISIS is our war.
While the public rallies around King Abdullah, Rantawi says the country's involvement against ISIS will increase, but only to a point.
More airstrikes, yes. More intelligence and security operations, yes. Maybe special forces for some surgeries here and there, yes. But ground troops deployed in Syria or in Iraq in big numbers, I think it needs different conditions.
Those conditions would include other Middle East nations like Saudi Arabia and the Gulf states joining Jordan in the fight.
By creating a serious military forces and deploy them in Iraq, Jordan will be part of this. But to go alone or with a few countries, I don't think Jordan will do it.
Until such a coalition comes about, Jordan's air campaign continues, and according to a Jordanian general, is making progress.
ISIS has lost 20% of its capabilities, and more than 7,000 of their criminal fighters have been killed.
Many here still look to the U.S. for leadership. But as this man told us, in the fight against ISIS, which he calls Daesh, the U.S. is in the wrong position.
Leading from behind is not good. It's no more. It's not good to be leading from behind. You must be leading from front. To lead people to finish Daesh. Leading from behind, I don't believe it's good.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Amman, Jordan.
Pat, what do you think Jordan should do right now?
Well, I think they're doing everything they can do. They have a superb fighting force. You know, the desert tribesmen are fiercely loyal to the king, and they're willing to do his bidding, and this thing has been an affront to their nation. But what that analyst is saying, they're not going to be able to get sustained ground forces unless the United States will put up something as well. So it's up to us not to lead from behind, but to get with it. And we have a president who just won't do it. I mean, it's just that bad. And you can scream and yell and say it's terrible, but he won't. There is some encouraging. I said at the beginning of this program, the word today is that Mosul, which is that big city in Iraq, the Peshmerga are beating ISIS in that area, and they may well be retaking Mosul, which I think was a Christian city primarily. We need to do everything we can to help the Peshmerga. And what was happening is the supplies were going through the central government in Baghdad, and they weren't passing them on to the Peshmerga. Now I think the pipelines are somewhat open, and the supplies are coming through. Give those people the weapons, and they will fight. And when at the end of the line, they deserve, I said it before, and I'll say it again, they deserve their own country. They're wonderful people, and they want to be free. And there's a group in Syria, there's a group in Iraq, and there's a group in Turkey, and they need to have an independent Kurdistan. But that's down the road. Right now, we need to give them arms, supplies, air support, whatever it takes, and they will beat ISIS. And that will be a crushing blow to Islamic terrorism around the world if ISIS is constantly defeated by Peshmerga forces. We need to beat them. Wendy.
Pat, the Supreme Court is already signaling that it intends to clear the way for same-sex marriage across America. That's the opinion from Justice Clarence Thomas on Monday. He wrote his view in a dissent. Fellow Justice Antonin Scalia agreed when the High Court refused to delay same-sex marriages in Alabama. Thomas and Scalia say it gives the impression that the justices already have decided they will declare gay marriage legal under the Constitution. Justices Elena Kagan and Ruth Bader Ginsburg even performed same-sex weddings last year. Gay marriage was set to become legal in Alabama this week, but Sunday night, Alabama Chief Justice Roy Moore told state probate judges not to perform same-sex weddings.
Well, I think a redefinition of the word marriage is not found within the powers designated to the federal government. Do they stop with one man, or one woman and one woman? Or do they go to multiple marriages? Or do they go to marriages between men and their daughters, or women and their sons?
The Supreme Court is expected to rule on same-sex marriage in June. Well, the days of plunging prices at the pump are over, for now at least, after oil prices began rising again. Gas prices also started climbing last week. Oil prices fell from around $108 a barrel last summer to under $45. And now they've rebounded back over $50. But analysts are split on where they'll go from here. Some believe they'll keep heading higher, but one forecast from Citigroup projects that oil could drop as low as $20 a barrel in the months ahead. Do you think that could happen, Pat?
I don't know. Citicorp went bankrupt, and I'm not sure they know all that needs to be known, but a Middle East oil expert, the one that really are at the pumps, are saying, no, it'll come back up. That would be my call, but I do think it's going to be choppy. The oil market's going to be choppy for the next 6, 7, 8 months, maybe even a year. You'll have spikes, go up, and then plunge down, and then up, and then down. And then before it settles, and I think $60 is probably a pretty good settling point. But right now, it's in flux, so I wouldn't take a lot of money and put it out on the table in support of $100 a barrel oil.
A New Jersey high schooler won her case to keep the phrase "under God" in the Pledge of Allegiance. Samantha Jones says she was outraged when an atheist group, the American Humanist Association, demanded the phrase be taken out when the pledge was recited at her New Jersey high school. She took the case to the state court, where the judge dismissed the case. This is the second time a state court has stopped the American Humanist Association from outlawing the pledge. The first time was in Massachusetts. Nigeria has postponed its upcoming presidential election. The move comes after violent attacks by the radical Islamic terrorist group Boko Haram. The election was set to happen February 14th, but Nigeria's Electoral Commission says they will be pushed back now to March 28th because voter safety cannot be guaranteed. Chad and Nigeria have launched military strikes against Boko Haram in the last several days and forced them out of dozens of towns and villages, and they say they plan more military action in the days ahead. And you can always get the latest from CBN News by going to our website at cbnnews.com.